Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at a moment, a speech really, that fundamentally shaped American history, and it remains incredibly contentious.
We're talking about Booker T. Washington's 1895 Atlanta Compromise speech. It's a masterclass in strategic maneuvering under extreme pressure.
Absolutely. If you want a case study in leadership when your back is against the wall, this is it. Our mission today is to really get into the weeds, unpack the strategy behind it.
Right, the core tension. Washington prioritizing economic self-sufficiency, industrial education over the immediate push for political and social equality for African Americans.
And that's the rub, isn't it? That compromise, why it's still debated so fiercely. Was it visionary pragmatism or damaging accommodation?
Exactly. And you can't understand the choice without understanding the time. Post-Reconstruction South. It wasn't just difficult, it was dangerous. The promises of the Civil War were, frankly, evaporating.
Or being actively rolled back. Washington wasn't just theorizing, he was responding to a brutal reality.
It really speaks to that idea, that sometimes the obstacle is the way. You can't smash through the wall, so you have to find a different path. Courage isn't always charging forward. Sometimes it's the discipline to pivot.
A pivot towards what you can control.
Precisely. Focusing leverage where it might actually work, even if it's a long game.
Okay, so let's set that stage. What was the reality before he gave that speech in Atlanta?
It's bleak. You have to picture the crushing weight of disappointment and, honestly, terror after Reconstruction ended. Federal troops pulled out, Jim Crow laws locking in segregation.
And the vote being systematically stolen. Poll taxes, literacy tests, grandfather clauses, and just outright violence and intimidation. The 14th and 15th Amendments. On paper, maybe. In reality, increasingly meaningless for Black Southerners.
The political promises had collapsed. And alongside that, maybe even underpinning it, was economic warfare.
Yeah, the sources really highlight this. It wasn't just about being poor. It was about being actively excluded from the means of advancement.
We see figures like Sojourner Truth talking about this way back in 1867, just after the war. She's pointing out that Black men, even then, were being shut out of skilled trades.
Things like the printers union she mentioned.
Yeah.
But also the newer jobs, the ones driving the economy forward.
Right. Salesmen, pharmacists, bank clerks, telegraph operators, these paths to stability, to middle-class life were just closed, systematically blocked.
So you've got political rights vanishing and economic opportunity being strangled. It creates this profound strategic crisis. What do you do?
Well, the earlier approach, the abolitionist fire of someone like Frederick Douglass, relied heavily on moral arguments and legal rights, but Douglass himself saw the fragility of that.
He talked about the Fugitive Slave Act, how it made the entire country complicit, a hunting ground. If the federal government couldn't even protect the basic right to not be dragged back into slavery,
then how reliable is it going to be for protecting voting rights or economic rights in a hostile South? The legal ground felt incredibly shaky.
So if the external levers, politics, law are failing, where do you turn?
Sojourner Truth, again, hinted at it earlier. She called for self-assertion, yes, but specifically urged Black men to throw off your fearfulness and focus on knowledge and improvement.
Asking that key question, shall the chains of ignorance forever confine them? Implying that internal development, knowledge was a key.
Washington grabs on to that idea, that need for internal strength, but he focuses it intensely on the industrial and economic. It's about skills, land, business.
Okay, and you mentioned framing this in terms of control. How does that apply here?
Yeah, think of it like concentric circles. Innermost is direct control. Your own actions, your skills, your education, your work ethic.
Things you yourself can change.
Exactly. Then there's indirect control. Influencing others, persuading, negotiating, building partnerships.
And the outermost ring.
No control. The fundamental realities you can't change right now, like, say, the deeply ingrained racism of Southern legislatures in the 1890s, or the collapse of federal will to enforce rights.
So demanding immediate social equality and political power from those legislatures, that was falling into no control, or at best, very difficult indirect control.
And it often provoked violent backlash, making things even worse. Washington's genius, or his compromise, depending on your view, was to say, let's pour all our energy into the direct control circle.
Build skills, buy land, start businesses, become indispensable through education of head, hand, and heart.
Right. Don't keep banging your head against the no-control wall. Build your own foundation first. He was betting that economic power, demonstrated economic value, would eventually create the leverage that political demands alone couldn't.
A strategy of building from the ground up, focusing on tangible assets and skills.
So Washington gets this unprecedented platform in Atlanta, 1895, a black man addressing a major exposition, mostly white audience, Southern leaders. The pressure must have been immense.
He had to thread an incredibly fine needle, reassure the white power structure he wasn't a threat, while also motivating and guiding his own community.
And he does it with these incredibly potent metaphors. The most famous, aimed squarely at the white industrialists, is cast down your bucket where you are.
Let's unpack that. What's he really saying there?
He's saying, look, you need labor for your farms, your factories, your mines. Stop looking to immigrants, people with strange tongue and habits.
He frames immigration as potentially disruptive, unfamiliar.
Exactly. And then he offers the alternative. Use us. Use the 8 million black people already here. We know you, you know us.
He appeals to their self-interest, pure and simple, economic logic.
And he reminds them of the track record. We tilled your fields, cleared your forests, built your railroads and cities. We've already proven our capability and our loyalty.
It's a powerful appeal to shared history, but framed entirely through labor and economic contribution.
And then comes the stability pitch. This is maybe the killer app for that audience, given the labor unrest of the era Haymarket. Pullman.
Big, violent strikes were fresh in everyone's minds.
Right. So Washington assures them, you'll be surrounded by the most patient, faithful, law-abiding, and unresentful people the world has seen.
That word unresentful really jumps out.
It's doing so much work there. He explicitly says black labor worked without strikes and labor wars. It's an open invitation. We offer peace. We offer predictability. Invest in us.
Let us buy your surplus land. Run your factories. He's proposing an economic partnership.
A partnership that makes their economic fates intertwined, which leads directly to the most famous and infamous line of the speech.
The fingers in hand analogy.
This is where the deal is laid bare. He says, in all things that are purely social, we can be as separate as the fingers, yet one as the hand in all things essential to mutual progress.
Wow. Okay, break that down. Separate as the fingers in social matters.
That's the concession. He's signaling acceptance, or at least non-resistance for now, to social segregation. Don't worry, we won't push for integration for sitting together in the rail car or the restaurant.
But one is the hand in economic progress.
That's the payoff. Let us work together, build together, profit together. Economic unity, even with social separation.
It seems like he's endorsing segregation. Was that the price he felt he had to pay?
That's the heart of the debate. His defenders would say yes. He believed pushing for social equality then was suicidal, that it invited violence and would destroy the fragile economic progress they could make.
So, concede the social fight temporarily to secure the space to build economic power.
That seems to be the calculation. Secure the foundation, the land, the skills, the businesses, and maybe, just maybe, once black people were indispensable economically, the social separation couldn't hold. The hand would eventually need the fingers to be closer. It was a gamble on sequence.
And what was the message embedded in this for black people themselves?
Patience. Focus. Don't start at the top, he urged. Don't let our grievances overshadow our opportunities. Meaning, yes, the injustices are real, the grievances are valid, but don't let anger or frustration distract from the hard work of building skills, accumulating capital, improving farms, mastering trades. Focus on the opportunities for self-improvement and economic gain, however limited they might seem.
Build your own economic world first, essentially. A tough message of self-reliance, almost bordering on deference to the status quo, at least on the surface.
Deeply uncomfortable, as you said, but powerful in its focus on agency within severe constraints.
The speech wasn't just content, it was a performance. And it worked, at least with the white audience, almost immediately. Why was it so persuasive?
Well, if you look at it through the lens of classical rhetoric, I think Aristotle, Quintilian Washington is hitting all the right notes for deliberative oratory. That's the rhetoric of giving advice, persuading an audience about a future course of action.
And Aristotle said rhetoric is about finding the available means of persuasion. Washington found them.
He did. And key to that was his style. Quintilian advised that this kind of speech needs moderation, language free from all affectation, no torrential style of eloquence.
Washington wasn't trying to be Cicero.
Exactly. He used plain language, simple, direct metaphors, the bucket, the hand, things people could grasp immediately, especially in a society still very connected to agriculture and basic industry. It felt practical, grounded.
Not abstract or perhaps crucially threatening.
Right. Elaborate language might have signaled intellectual challenge or political ambition, which could have been perceived as radical or uppity. Simplicity felt safer, more focused on the tangible work he was proposing.
And what about ethos, the speaker's credibility? How did he build trust with an audience predisposed to distrust him?
This is fascinating. He didn't build ethos on claims of equality or rights. He built it on reliability and non-aggression. Aristotle said the best proof is that the speaker seems like a good person. Washington defined good here as patient, faithful, law-abiding, unresentful.
He emphasized the history of service, the lack of strikes.
Basically saying, we are a known quantity, a safe bet. You can trust us because our track record shows loyalty and productivity, not disruption. He used the past to validate his advice for the future.
So ethos built on perceived usefulness and lack of threat, rather than, say, moral authority demanding justice.
Precisely. And that ties into how he packaged the message. Those key lines, cast down your bucket, separate as the fingers, they function like maxims.
Short, memorable, repeatable phrases. Sound bites, almost.
Exactly. Both Aristotle and Quintilian highlighted the power of maxims. They condense complex ideas, make them easy to remember, easy to spread. Washington gave the white South easily digestible phrases that summarized his accommodationist stance, making it politically palatable.
It makes a message incredibly clear, even if the underlying implications are complex. As Quintilian apparently noted, wording matters for clarity. It finds a small necessary place in teaching because it affects reception.
Washington ensured his message partnership over confrontation, economic focus over social agitation was received loud and clear, exactly as he intended for that audience.
Okay, so shifting from the rhetoric aimed outwards, let's look at the internal strategy for the Black community, this focus on economics, on industrial education. What was the deeper philosophy there?
It seems to be a redefinition, or maybe a very specific application, of the idea that knowledge is power, but not just any knowledge.
Not abstract political theory or even liberal arts necessarily.
Less so at this stage. Washington emphasized vocational knowledge. Skills you could use immediately: farming, carpentry, bricklaying, mechanics, domestic service. Tangible skills that led to tangible results: a job, a house, a farm, a small business.
So power derived from practical capability and material accumulation rather than argument or protest.
Yes. And you can see how this aligns with certain ideas about success. Think of Earl Nightingale's definition: success as the progressive realization of a worthy ideal.
Washington gave them a very clear, worthy ideal: economic self-sufficiency. Owning land, running businesses, achieving parity in industry and agriculture.
It's measurable. You can see the progress day by day, year by year, even if the political climate remains hostile. It gives you something concrete to strive for, something within your sphere of influence.
And there's maybe a psychological benefit too, right? In focusing on work during such a traumatic period.
Absolutely. This is where I think the concept of flow becomes really relevant.
Flow, as in Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's work, getting lost in an activity.
Exactly. This kind of education of head, hand, and heart Washington championed involved learning and mastering challenging tasks. When you're deeply focused on laying bricks correctly, or learning a new farming technique, or mastering a craft.
You're not focused on the lynchings, the segregation, the insults.
Precisely. Flow requires intense concentration, clear goals, immediate feedback. It absorbs your attention. Csikszentmihalyi says it helps you forget all the unpleasant aspects of life. It imposes order on consciousness, pushing out the chaos, the psychic entropy of the outside world.
So the work itself becomes a refuge, a way to build not just economic stability, but also mental resilience and a sense of control.
I think that's a huge part of it. It provides structure, purpose, and a feeling of competence in an environment designed to strip you of all three. It's a constructive way to channel energy and build positive habits.
Which, as we know, forming new habits, especially under duress, is incredibly hard.
Very hard. But that worthy ideal of economic progress provides the motivation. It fuels the effort needed to build those brand new habits of thrift, industry, and skill development.
This brings us back to the idea of sequencing, the long-term strategy.
Yeah.
You mentioned Stephen Covey's ideas before: primary and secondary greatness.
Yes, I think that framework helps explain the deep logic. Primary greatness is about character: integrity, discipline, work ethic, courage. And crucially, for Washington, it included economic competence building that solid foundation.
And secondary greatness.
That's the external recognition: social status, political rights, public acclaim, equality under the law.
Washington's argument, implicitly, was that you must build primary greatness first.
In that specific historical context, yes. He seemed to believe that demanding secondary greatness, full political and social rights, without the foundation of economic power and demonstrated character, as defined by reliability and productivity, was not only futile but dangerous.
Like trying to build a house on sand. The personality ethic Covey talks about focusing on image and technique without the substance.
Exactly. Washington saw the post-Reconstruction push for political rights, without a corresponding base of economic independence and community self-sufficiency, as vulnerable. It could be easily undermined or crushed. His compromise was a strategy to build that primary foundation first.
Make the Black community so economically essential, so interwoven with the South's prosperity.
That denying them rights would eventually become economically damaging to the white power structure itself. Make their interests one as the hand, then maybe the demand for secondary greatness would have real leverage.
But this strategy, this compromise, it wasn't universally acclaimed even then. There was significant pushback, right?
Oh, absolutely. Intense pushback. While Washington was meeting with presidents and raising funds for Tuskegee, a powerful counterargument was forming, rejecting the entire premise of accommodating segregation.
And the most prominent voice of that critique.
W.E.B. Du Bois. He became the intellectual heart of the opposition. Du Bois simply did not accept that political and civil rights could be put on the back burner.
What was his core argument against Washington?
In his book, The Souls of Black Folk, which is just essential reading, Du Bois lays it out. He famously called Washington the Great Compromiser and argued his approach had three terrible consequences.
Okay, what were they?
First, Du Bois said it led to the practical acceptance of Black inferiority and segregation. By saying separate as the fingers, Washington was seen as blessing Jim Crow.
A second.
The withdrawal of Black protest. Washington's emphasis on internal focus and avoiding agitation discouraged the necessary fight against injustice.
And third.
The devaluation of higher education. Du Bois feared Washington's focus on industrial training would limit Black potential, denying the need for leaders educated in the liberal arts, law, and politics, what he later called the talented 10th.
So Du Bois saw political power not as a result of economic progress, but as the prerequisite for it.
Exactly. How can you protect your property, your businesses, your economic gains if you don't have the vote, if you can't influence the laws, if the state can just legislate your progress away?
It's that fundamental strategic question again. Shield first or property first?
Washington bet on property building leverage for the shield later. Du Bois argued you needed the shield now to even have property worth protecting. He saw Washington's compromise not as a temporary tactic, but as a dangerous surrender.
A surrender that could legitimize segregation indefinitely.
That was the fear, that it taught the white South they could have Black labor without granting Black rights, that the hand could stay unified economically while the fingers remained permanently socially separate.
So you have this profound split. Washington seeing accommodation as a strategy for survival and building a foundation in a hostile world.
And his critics, like Du Bois, seeing it as a moral failure that traded essential rights for limited economic opportunity and delayed true equality. This tension really defined the struggle for Black advancement for the next half-century. #outro.
So when we dig into the Atlanta Compromise, it's clear we're looking at a leader facing just impossible choices in a moment of intense crisis. Washington's goal seems clear enough: weave the economic life of Black and white Southerners together so tightly that their interests became one.
Yeah, make Black progress essential for Southern progress, but the path he chose involved that incredibly difficult trade-off. Accept social separation, at least for a time, to gain the space needed for economic development and internal strengthening. The separate fingers, yet one hand.
The whole strategy was about shifting focus, wasn't it? Moving energy away from confronting the overwhelming external power structure.
And directing it inwards, towards building skills, character, businesses, community institutions, focusing on that sphere of direct control.
And the debate continues, obviously. Was it a necessary, even brilliant tactical retreat? Or was it a damaging concession that set back the cause of civil rights?
There's no easy answer. But the story itself, the dilemma Washington faced, forces us to think about strategy in any difficult struggle. And maybe that's the takeaway for you, listening now.
Think about the obstacles you face, whether personal or in your community or work. When you're up against something huge, something seemingly immovable, what's the more effective path?
Do you spend all your energy demanding change from the outside force banging on the locked door? Or is there value in turning inward first? Focusing all your effort on building your own foundation, your skills, your resources, your resilience, your primary greatness, so that when you eventually make your demands, they can't be easily dismissed.
Building that internal strength, that self-sufficiency, so the external walls become less relevant, or maybe even start to crumble on their own. That's the provocative, enduring question left by Booker T. Washington's Compromise.
A question worth wrestling with.
Thank you for joining us on The Deep Dive.